Here's this week's Blending the Family Parenting Tip Tuesday from your host, Tommy Maloney. What's it this week? What's the little tip you're going to give us, Tommy?
Yes, welcome. Parenting Tip Tuesday from the podcast Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. This is the last podcast for 2019. And then 2020, we have some things. If you've listened to the preview for 2020, we have some great guests. I have some great guests already lined up. Recorded one last night. Super excited for 2020. I am super excited. Super excited. And hopefully, I'm going to say this again when we get a year from now, when we're getting into 2021. I hope that 2020, not only for me, but for you as well, that it's going to be a great, not only a new year, but a new century? Is that right? Decade. Oh man, need some more tea. All right, on this episode of Parenting Tip Tuesday, this is going to be a little long, and I want to talk to you about, have you thought about your legacy? Have you really thought about your legacy? Have you thought about what your kids will say after you have passed? What will they say to their children about you, even years after your resting place, be it upstairs or maybe downstairs? Get my drift? Actually, this was a conversation I had with a young man named Bryan recently, whose father had passed away about 2 years ago. He was telling me about how much he missed his dad, what kind of mentor his dad was to Bryan, the fun times they had together, the lessons Bryan learned because of the time he got to spend with his dad. And quite honestly, I started thinking more and more about after I had this conversation with Bryan, I really thought about what kind of things will my son say to his friends after I've passed away? What will my bonus kids, Betsy and Becca, say after I've passed away? What have I, hopefully in a positive way, created in their life? Do you even care? Do you really care about your legacy at all? Well, that's what we're going to talk about on this episode of the podcast. I have a friend. We're not going to use his real name. We're going to call him Lawrence, who has 3 kids. And Lawrence recently broke up with his girlfriend. And for the first time in years, the man is single. And I was working with him recently, and all he could fixate is not having a girlfriend. And one of my colleagues and I, a good friend of mine as well, we kept telling Lawrence, you really need to focus on your kids and maybe focus on yourself as well. And I asked Lawrence, I said, do you really think your kids care if you have a girlfriend or not? No. They want to spend time with their dad. Again, after speaking with Lawrence, it was sad to say that I really don't think he understood that he needed to make his kids a higher priority. What do you think the legacy he's creating? Think about it. Also think about, have you really sat down to think about your legacy? What is your legacy? What is your relationship going to be like when your kids, well, not that your relationships you're going to be around, but what about your relationship with your inner circle? What are they going to say at your funeral? Will they say nice things at your funeral? Recently I had this discussion with my wife, and she was saying that, most people care what people think about them, and I don't. All I really care about is, did I treat you with respect? Was I kind to you? And I really started thinking more and more about this. Legacy. again, after having this conversation with my new friend Bryan, Bryan was telling me stories about how he spent time with his dad, about how he was able to build things with his dad. And quite honestly, my friends, his face just lit up as he started talking about his dad. And I really wanted to cry because it was so beautiful. Hearing Bryan's stories, hearing how Bryan just had a great relationship with his dad. Lately, I started thinking more and more about this, especially after this conversation with Bryan, because I don't feel that I've been a good enough role model for my family. Right now, as we get towards the end of the holidays, I've struggled with my weight, hate the dreaded day job, and I don't necessarily feel my depression is getting better. Might be getting a little, well, we'll talk about that some other time. This is not how you create a positive legacy. So, how does someone create a lasting legacy? So, I want to share with you today my 7 ideas to create a better legacy. The order of these is irrelevant. Most importantly, it's all about the execution. All right, here we go. Number 1. When I was in grade school, our class had a field trip to the Chicago area, and I lived with my mom out in the burbs. Hold on, little sip of tea. Dramatic pause, maybe. Ginger and honey tea, really good. Anyway, taking a field trip down to Chicago, my dad was kind enough to volunteer as a chaperone for our school trip. We met him down there. On this particular field trip, we were visiting one of the Chicago newspapers, and it was so cool. I got to have this memory. This memory is tattooed on my brain forever and ever. I took that life lesson. When I became a dad, I would do my best to chaperone as many field trips as I could with my son, Connor, in his grade school. But it was one of those things that I really think when I am, and I hate to start thinking about this because my dad is getting up in age. Hi, Dad. Love you, man. But the good thing is this is going to be a story I get to tell. I get to talk about how a legacy he created, and it's quite possible he really wasn't thinking about it, of the life lesson he taught me, especially when I was so young. I don't know, 6, 7 years old, 8 maybe. The moral of the story is step up, sit on a school bus with a bunch of screaming kids, and enjoy those opportunities of those class field trips. Okay, that's number 1. All right, here's number 2. Sip of tea. Are we having fun yet? I hope so. All right, number 2. One of those popular movies is back because they have a part 2. Do you like the movie Frozen? Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to talk about that sometime on the podcast, about seeing the movie Frozen. But you might not, but guess what? Your kids might. A friend of mine, one heck of a dad. Cool dad. Matter of fact, his name is James Lopez. You can find James at his website, Cool for Dads, the number 4. Cool, the number 4 dads.com. Cool4dads.com. Also find him on Instagram. Matter of fact, he is a upcoming guest on the podcast, so stay tuned for that. Find him on Instagram as Fatherhood is Lit. Fatherhood is L-I-T, lit. Fatherhood is lit. Anyway, James told me on the podcast actually that night that he'd received free tickets for a Frozen event. His youngest son wanted to attend and go and Did James say to his son no because this was something that dad did not want to do? Heck no! So the point here is to do things that your kids want to do, even though those times where you don't want to do. But again, you're creating a legacy, you're creating memories. Who knows? Will they have these memories tattooed on their brain? I don't know. But how cool will it be if that does happen? All right, another sip of tea. That was lesson number 2. Here we go. Number 3. After a sip of tea. Mentioning that I've been struggling this year with my weight. We parents really need to think about our health. Our kids will mirror both good and bad habits. All of our kids in our family are in a sport. Rebecca's in basketball right now. Connor's got hockey. Our oldest, Betsy, I know consistently hits the gym. So all 3 of our kids are either in a sport or are hitting the gym, as I said. Our kids will mirror both good and bad habits, okay? In my first book, 25 Tips for Divorced Dads, I do mention that being physically fit is vital. You want to be on the planet for a long time so you can hang with your kids and give them grief and annoy the heck out of them and embarrass them. For me in the past, we call Becca and Connor the Wonder Twins. And in the past, I would go to the gym with them. The 3 of us would go and shoot hoops. It was fun. I had a blast, and I miss those days because they've gotten older. They're starting to get to the point where they don't want to hang out with me, which I get. I understand. But I want you to think about this. What activity can you do with your kids? Think about it. It could even be hopscotch. All right, number 4. This I hope will hit home with a lot of you. Number 4 is having open and honest communication. Also, if you are not living in the same house as your kids, so divorced, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, we need to do our best to daily have communication with your kids. Now, if you have teenagers, this isn't always going to be easy. All right? You can try and call them. And of course, they're going to look and see who's calling. They might ignore you. But at times, you can even send a text message saying to them just, "Hi, I love you." However, do not use text messaging to have serious and real conversations. In serious and real conversations, I do not mean by "how's your day?" You already know you already know that answer by asking the kids. For example, dads, have you had the talk? Have you? Have you seriously sat down with your son and had the talk? One of the talks I've had with Connor is about he will never hit a woman. Period. End of story right there. Okay? Have you had conversations with your kids about drugs? Listen, I am an open and honest book. If you are a regular listener to this podcast, you know we've had guests on the podcast talking and asking me personal questions, and I have no issues whatsoever answering them honestly. Okay? So get ready for this one. Sip of tea. Years ago, Connor asked me if I'd ever done drugs, and I was honest with him. I told him the only drug that I had ever done was marijuana. That was it. Too afraid to do anything else. And quite honestly, whoa, excuse me, hold on. And quite honestly, I never was around a group of my friends that did anything other than smoking a joint every once in a while. That's it. I just I was too scared to even think about doing that, and it was just not my thing. Okay, be honest with your kids. Okay, be honest with your kids. When you are having those conversations with your kids, one important thing to remember: do less talking, do more listening. Okay? If you do not tell the truth in front of your kids, they're going to know. We're going to talk about in number 5. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But listen to your kids. Okay? Have those open conversations. Have you had a conversation? I've had this conversation with both Becca and Connor. I said, and I know my wife Ann has had this conversation as well with the kids, and that is, if you ever find yourself in a situation you are not comfortable in, or let's go to the extreme, you ever find yourself, you are in jail, no questions asked. You will call me, no questions asked. You want to open up to me and tell me? Perfect. No questions asked. Have these conversations. All right, that was number 4. Number 5. There will be times, and I know, I know it can be hard, but you'll need to admit when you are wrong. This goes beyond acknowledging it to your kids, and I am bad at this, but this could even be admitting you're wrong to your former spouse. Part of your legacy is what your character is seen by others. Let me repeat that. Part of your legacy is what your character is seen by others. Does that make sense? So, for example, people will see your BS detector. They will know if you are not honest with them. They will know you're not telling the truth. Be honest. Admit when you are wrong. Admit when you make your mistakes. If you do not tell the truth in front of your kids and they know you're not telling the truth, what does that say about your moral fiber? Think about it. All right, that's number 5. Number 6. This one, I know a lot of parents have a problem with this. You have, and I couldn't even tell you the definition. You've got helicopter parents, snowplow parents. I don't even know what the others are. Those aren't two that came to my mind. But it's okay to fail. It's even better if you fail in front of your kids. Let's take it up a notch and say, let your kids fail too. Let your kids fail in front of you. One of my, I don't know what to call her, business heroes, business mentors, Sarah Blakely. Sarah Blakely runs the company Spanx. And yes, men, she has men's products as well. Not that I know, or not that I have any. Maybe one day. But I've heard several interviews with her where she's talked about how her dad, number one, gave her a set of cassette motivational tapes from Dr. Wayne Dyer. But Sarah Blakely also talks about the question of the day her dad would ask her and her brother each and every day. The question was, did you fail at something today? And her dad would be disappointed if the kids didn't have anything to say about that. Let your kids fail. Fail in front of them. Let them fail in front of you. So, let me give you... this is my ego. This is how bad my ego is. There are times where Connor and I would go to one of the local ice hockey rinks, and he's a goalie. He and I would go on the ice and work on some drills together. The one thing I hated to do was to fall on the ice. Why? My ego. Because if I fall down, that means I am not a good skater. BS. Okay? So, again, don't be afraid to let your kids fail. Remember when they were learning how to walk? How many tries did it take them? Let them fail. Failure can be such a great learning tool. Again, do not let your ego get the best of you. Failing is part of life, like it or not. That was number 6. All right, number 7. I can feel something in my throat, so let me... Excuse me. How you doing? You enjoying? I hope you're enjoying this. All right. Number 7, finally. And this might be one of those where you're going to roll your eyes at me on this, but stick with me on this, okay? To me, in my mind, this can be very important for your legacy. And this is probably one of those you really might have to sit down and really think about it. Let it just sink in. All right, here we go. Make your bed every day. Yes, I said it. Make your bed every day. What does this have to do with your legacy? Simple. If your kids see that you are making your bed consistently, then you are now creating a positive habit in front of them. Okay? Listen, they might not right away mirror you making your bed. Okay? Might not. But that's okay. If you force them, okay? If you force them to do things, they're going to rebel. All right? It's like, go clean your room. Is that for them or is that for you? If you don't like a messy room, shut the door. Okay? Just shut the door. All right? I will admit, neither of the Wonder Twins make their bed when they are here at the house. But in my mind, it is still a visual that one day this will make sense to them how important it is to make their bed. Let me tell you, after my divorce, that's when I started making my bed every day. To the point, I would even do it during a period of time when I was out of work. And even if I wasn't leaving the house that day, that bed was still made. Let me give you another example of creating positive habits that hopefully your kids will also mirror. When I do speaking engagements, I wear a tie. When I used to coach youth hockey, I wore a tie. Because Connor has seen me wear a tie, he wears a tie when he goes to his hockey games. Okay? It might not be making the bed, but it's a positive image that he saw what was important to me. What was important to me is making sure I dress properly. And like I said, because of that, he wears a tie. All right? So those are the 7 things. Yes, I know. I could keep going. But you're a smart group. You're a smart audience. So I know you understand where we're going. We could keep going, like I said. Listen, we parents are far from being perfect. Try being a bonus parent. Even more laborious. Trust me on that one. As I said at the start of this podcast, do you think of your legacy? After talking to Bryan, it really did hit me of where I can improve as both being a man and a dad. So for example, for me, I want to have more meaningful conversations with the Wonder Twins. I want to be better at, only if they're open to it, offering some life advice. Being honest with them, letting them know what mistakes I made so they can learn from them. Will they make mistakes? Heck yeah. But remember, let them fail, right? Let them fail. Overall, we parents should remember that our kids are watching us, and listening to us. You know that old saying, talking about our actions speak louder than words. That is the truth. That is the truth. So today, my plea to you is that going forward, you'll think more about your actions. Because remember, when you are long gone from this world, wouldn't you want your kids to say kind things about you? Especially at your final resting place. Either up or down. I hope you got something out of this. I hope there was some value to you. Please subscribe to the podcast. Please leave rating and reviews. My goal moving forward is to get this podcast out to the masses, and I can't do it without you. So this is my big ask. Okay? Please, however you get this podcast, leave a rating and review. All right? And I will end it the way we normally end it, because I know for a fact that let's just say, you've helped somebody in your past and they became successful because of your help. So, for 2019, your success is my success. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you will continue listening to this podcast. Please share this podcast with others that you know need a message like this. I am truly blessed. Truly blessed. Thank you. That's it. Merry New Year!
Wait. Please leave a rating and review. However you get this podcast, whether it's through the mail or from your neighbor or listening in under the couch. I don't know. You tell me.